Well, welcome again. This is the Doctor of Digital, the Doctor of Digital podcast. The purpose of the show is to transform your business and life with education and inspiration. I introduce busy business leaders to trends in business, technology, and marketing to highlight people you should know. Can we truly achieve a harmonious balance between external success and internal fulfillment, or are they inherently at odds, forcing us to prioritize one over the other? My guest today, with his remarkable journey of self-discovery, might just hold the key to unlocking this age-old conundrum. Joining me is Alan Lazaros, a remarkable individual whose life experiences have shaped his mission to guide others towards a life of profound meaning and purpose. From the devastating loss of his father at a tender age to a near-fatal car accident that shook him to his core at 26, Alan's path has been one of deep introspection and personal growth. It was during his darkest moments that he encountered two beacons of light: Bronnie Ware's The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying and a TED Talk by the inimitable Tony Robbins that ignited his unwavering commitment to self-improvement. This journey has led him to develop a heart-driven yet no-nonsense approach to inspiring, motivating, and educating others on what it truly takes to reach the next level of their lives. Today, Alan leads a global team of 21 individuals, drawing from his vast experience spanning 10,000 hours of speaking, podcasting, training, and coaching people from all walks of life. With an unwavering belief that the right knowledge, mentors, community, and habits can empower heart-driven individuals to achieve both success and fulfillment beyond their wildest dreams. During this episode, we'll do a deep dive into the changes and hot topics of a successful leader for life's biggest challenges and growth. I will leverage the expertise of my guest and how to navigate the unique dynamics of the field. By the end of this episode, you'll be better equipped to know what to do, and I encourage you to contact my guest, Alan Lazaros, CEO, founder, and co-host of Next Level University. And with that, I'd like to welcome Alan to the show. How are you doing today, Alan?
That was an awesome introduction. Thank you. It's always a very humbling experience to hear an intro of you, like about you. It was awesome. I really appreciate it.
Well, I don't say anything that is not true, but I am truly impressed with your background. And, I usually sack the guests with saying, tell me about some story that got you on your path. But now you've got an incredible story, and I don't even know where to begin. So I'll let you tell us your story and your background.
So this is going to have to be the shortest version because I know we've got sort of a short form, 25 minutes here. So the shortest possible version, the first thing I usually say is I'm hoping to hit puberty at 36. I look very young for those of you who are on video. It really helps me in my business coaching. People really love it when someone younger coaches them. No, it doesn't help. But ultimately, so I'm going to try to condense 35 years into a couple minutes here. So didn't understand any of this at the time, but you had mentioned in the intro, my father passed away when I was 2. He was 28. My mom was 31. I had an older sister who was 6. My real last name is John McCorkle. John McCorkle was my father. Big Irish Catholic family: Jim, Joe, John, Jane, Joan, Jeanette. 6 siblings. And when my father passed away, my stepfather came into the picture. His name is Steve Lazaros. A lot of the people who are Greek, they look at me and they, blonde hair, blue eye, not a hair on you. Lazarus? And so my real last name is McCorkle. I'm Irish, German, Polish, Scottish type of thing. So I took the name Lazarus, and while we were trying to be the Lazaruses, we kind of didn't associate a ton with the McCorkles, maybe just out of the pain avoidance of facing that whole thing.
Sure.
Stepfather left at 14, and he took his entire extended family with him. I have since not spoken to a single one of that entire family, except for him on Facebook Messenger a little bit. And we didn't really associate with the McCorkles much. And then at that same time, 14 years old, hardest year of my life, didn't know that at the time. Only in reflection do I understand this. Not only did he got the apartment and the yacht, we got the house and the dog. And we went from upper middle class doing very well in the 90s, early 2000s to basically I get free lunch at school now because our income is so low. I don't know how I'm going to go to college. My mom trades in her BMW for a little Honda Civic type of thing. Now, we weren't going to starve, but we were definitely low income after that.
Sure.
that same time, my mom gets in a fight with her sister, my Aunt Sandy, and we get ostracized from her side of the family. So I kind of lost 3 families by the time I'm 14 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Same year, my sister moves out with her older boyfriend. So it was just me and my mom in that house. And my trauma response to all that, I didn't know this at the time, there's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. So I became quite a social coward. So fawn is basically appease, 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 don't poke the bear type of thing. But behind the scenes, it was fight. Aim higher, work harder, get smarter. So I became this weird, sort of low self-worth, high self-belief, uber achiever who just got straight A's through all of high school, got into my dream college, got tons of scholarships and financial aid, got my computer engineering degree, got my master's in business, and then I just started winning in corporate, 65K a year to 85 to 105, 105 to 125, 125 to almost 180. I'm in my mid-20s, paid off 84 grand worth of debt in a single year. I had $150,000 in a Vanguard account, just tech companies and different ETFs, investments. And then I got in my car accident. My car accident that you mentioned in that changed my whole life. And I realized I was this super achiever who was externally driven to try to sort of save my family, so to speak. And when my stepdad left, he took most of the income with him. So in my mind, becoming wealthy was the solution. So if we had money, we'd be better. Everything would be better. And I obviously found out that that's not necessarily true. Even though it's better, it's definitely not all of it. And so in hindsight, after my car accident, I realized, okay, I was definitely super successful, but deeply unfulfilled. Then I flipped the script, went all in on self-improvement, became really fulfilled, started my own company, but I was unsuccessful. So I went from, when I was a kid, unsuccessful and unfulfilled, to super successful and unfulfilled, to super fulfilled and unsuccessful. And now finally I'm 35, about to be 36 in November, and I can authentically say now I'm both successful and fulfilled. And I think that's where all of us really want to get. And honestly, I think one without the other is actually pretty easy. I think doing them simultaneously is very difficult.
And so this is such a turnaround. And one thing that's really remarkable about your story is to be able to put the two together. It's that internal, external thing that I'm referring to. And there's a conundrum. So how have you been able to navigate that? And what sort of changes have taken place in your life?
So I used to be very achievement oriented. And it was all about goals and it was about results. And then the process was whatever it took to be creative toward that goal, within reason, obviously. What I flipped the script on after 26 is, to your point, I went internal. So I was always external. So I call it STEMBIF, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, business, and finance. So I was the kid who could party at night and still get straight A's on the calc exams, even though I didn't go to class. I think a lot of that was giftedness, and I'm scared to say that because I think when people say that they're gifted, they get usually, people think they're arrogant. I think I had certain gifting externally. I feel like success and external goal orientation actually comes fairly naturally. The internal stuff never came naturally to me. So I kind of have these two buckets. One is professional development. The other one is personal development. So professional development is resume, cover letter, LinkedIn, competence, go do the thing, go reverse engineer the finish line, make sure you get the grades. That to me always came fairly easy. The personal development side, the inner work, the self-improvement, the self-reflection, the relationships, the emotional intelligence, that stuff was what I needed to work on. And so I think we're all sort of righty or lefty. I was righty and I needed to work on my left. And so I think if you want a successful and fulfilling life,
right,
you need to learn how to be ambidextrous, particularly in the 21st century, especially when it comes to leadership. You had mentioned my team, and now we have 22 people, all different cultures, all different backgrounds, all different countries. And if I wasn't emotionally intelligent as well as intellectually intelligent, sort of IQ, EQ type of thing, it would be, honestly, it would be impossible to do really what I'm doing. And I think a lot of computer engineers tend to be more one than the other.
Yeah. Would you say that now trying to have this balance between the two And could you identify, like, what would be some growth areas that you would say for an individual who's interested? Do they go for the external, the internal? Do they balance it? How do you approach those growth areas?
So if what you wanted was what you needed, you'd already have it. So usually I have you go to the opposite. If basketball's a good metaphor for this. I was righty and I was really good with my right, and you have to kind of tie your right hand behind your back and practice with your left if you want to be really good.
Mm-hmm.
And so for everyone out there, you kind of have to understand, are you better at relationships? And just ask yourself this simple question, self-awareness of, do I feel like I can achieve pretty much whatever I want within reason externally if you give me enough time? And if your answer is yes to that, you believe in yourself a lot, and you probably don't get along with people easily. And if you do get along with people easily, you're most likely being a chameleon. You're not really being your true self. That was me. So I used to drink a lot, and I used to try to fit in because I didn't fit in. And I think a lot of engineers think very differently. So a lot of them have very low self-worth, but they have high self-belief. And so self-belief is I can achieve it. Self-worth is I deserve it. Self-worth is more about love and self-love and valuing yourself. Self-belief is I can just do the stuff. I can achieve. And so, unfortunately, a lot of achievers actually do have low self-worth because they're in the minority. So if you look at the stats, I looked this up at the beginning of January. In research for a meetup we do them every month. And only 4% of people, according to this study, only 4% of people ever have written goals that they achieve. And so that means, what does that tell me? Underneath that, what it tells me is most people don't believe in themselves. And in my coaching, I've now coached for 7 years, all different types of people, all different types of coaching. And most people just don't believe in themselves. They don't say that. They don't even know that that's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
They think they do because most people are pretending that they do.
Yes.
And I also understand this too. You intellectually have the conscious, subconscious, and unconscious. So I'm talking about unconscious self-belief. Most people think they believe in themselves, but unconsciously they don't. And then there's some people, they do believe in themselves a ton unconsciously, but they think they don't. It's hilarious for me because you find these people, it's like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I struggle with self-doubt. It's like, no, you don't. And I know you don't. And then other people who really do, when they're alone, they pretend they don't in front of other people, right? So.
And this aspect is so different. I'd say it's a very unique approach. So I'm wondering, and I guess part of it is your background, part of it is the life experiences, but what do you recommend people to do? And it's probably tied into this internal, external dynamic that's going on within people. So what do you generally recommend, maybe for your coaching for individuals?
So what we do is we identify first what you struggle with more, self-belief or self-worth, and then we build it. Very few people have both. Usually there's low self-belief with this sort of public inflated self-worth.
Yeah.
Or there's high self-belief, martyrdom, but low self-worth that you just kind of do everything for everybody all the time because you believe in yourself and other people don't. And usually it's that kind of combination. So what we do is we identify which one you struggle with most, and then we work on building it. And if it's self-belief, I have a formula. So if you do struggle with self-belief, and this is when you're by yourself. So what do you think about yourself when you're by yourself? When you're with other people, everyone pretends to believe in themselves. Okay? When you're alone by yourself, do you struggle with self-doubt? And if you don't have goals and you don't have dreams, most likely it's because you don't believe in yourself. Why would someone with level 10 self-belief have level 2 goals? They just wouldn't, right? And so the first thing you got to do is identify if that's you. So if you're listening, most likely, if you have low self-belief and think it's high, you most likely struggle with me and most likely think I'm arrogant. And that's okay, because I realize why I seem so arrogant. It's because if you have level 10 self-belief and only level 8 humility, I'm going to look level 2 arrogant. It's interesting. And so if you're out there listening, if you struggle a lot with self-doubt, you know that I don't that much. And so it's like, ooh, either he's arrogant or I maybe don't believe in myself. So it can be harder. It's easier to villainize me than it is to just look at the truth. And so the first step to building self-belief is admitting you don't have it. And when you admit you don't have it, now you can go to work on it. And the formula is simple. It's state, prove, self-assign. So Most people stumble upon success in life. Their friends and family is who they grew up with. They stumble upon careers. They stumble upon jobs. It wasn't reverse engineered in advance. And so unfortunately, if you stumble upon success in sports or career or whatever, you don't build self-belief because you didn't decide in advance. So for example, when I was a kid, I decided I'm going to get straight A's, and then I went and proved to myself I could do it, which then built unconscious self-belief. And I've never really done anything without deciding in advance to do it. And that's the engineer in me. So that's why I have so much self-belief unconsciously, is because when you're constantly doing things that you say you're going to do, and then proving to yourself that you can do it, and then self-assigning it once you do, you build this scaffolding of self-belief inside of you. But then you don't get along with people because you trigger everybody. And a good example of that, don't associate me with him, but like Elon is like a good example of that, Elon Musk. He believes in himself to such an extreme extent, and most people don't, so he seems super arrogant to everybody. And he probably is to some degree, and please don't associate me with him, because honestly, I don't agree with a lot of who he is. But at the end of the day, what I do know is that most people don't actually believe in themselves, and he definitely does, and he's one of the few who actually does. Okay, so that's the self-belief side. State, prove, self-assign. So if you struggle with self-doubt, what you have to do is set the bar really low. State, I'm going to go to the gym tomorrow for 30 minutes. Prove to yourself that you can do it by actually doing it, and then when you do, you have to self-assign it. And then that actually builds a little bit of belief. Then you can up the ante, up the ante, up the ante. For those of you out there who do believe in yourselves a ton and don't struggle with self-doubt in terms of external achievement, you have a different issue, and that's self-worth. Self-worth issues usually come in the form of low boundaries. You kind of let people walk on you all the time. You feel like you have to do everything for everybody all the time. You constantly feel like guilt trips get to you, so you spend time with family out of guilt more than out of actually wanting to. Stuff like that. And usually you're more goal-oriented, so most people kind of villainize you because you're usually less available, and they think you're selfish. So most people who are goal-oriented are seen as very selfish, when in reality their goals are usually for other people. Not always, but a lot of times. And so you're not at every barbecue. You're not. Right. And even if you are at the barbecue, you kind of hide your true self because you trigger everybody when you actually talk about your goals and dreams. And so if that's you, you have a self-worth issue. And this is where you have to kind of build these 5. So the formula for self-worth is, the bottom is keep the small promises you make to yourself. If you had a friend who broke as many promises to you as you broke to yourself, how much would you value that friendship?
Yeah, well,
they just keep, right. So that's number 1. Keep the small promises you make to yourself. And that means socially. When you say you're not going to drink, you have to not drink, regardless of peer pressure. When you say you're not going to go to that barbecue and you go, you're breaking the promise to yourself out of guilt, social guilt, right? Mm-hmm. Number 2 is boundaries. And this is the big one for low self-worth people. Low self-worth will usually lower their boundaries to try to get love. And usually it's conditional love. And so they don't hold in strong boundaries typically. Typically they allow people in too close, and then they get attacked and or hurt. Obviously, I'm in this category. Okay, so you have to learn to have social courage. So if you struggle with self-doubt, you need to build self-belief. If you struggle with self-worth, you desperately need social courage. Social courage is, I don't really want to come to the wedding, and I'm going to actually be honest with you about that. And then you're going to attack me because it makes you feel insignificant. But I'm going to have the courage to actually say my truth, which is I have other things to focus on and I have goals. And you can see how defensive I'm getting even now, right? Okay. Yep. So number 2 is boundaries. Good luck with that, by the way. Awful. All right. Number three is courage. I just talked about it. Social courage. There's competence courage and social courage. Competence courage is I'm going to show up to the interview. Social courage is I'm going to say something that's really scary to say, even though I might be villainized. So when I say out loud that I don't struggle with self-doubt, that's something I can get very villainized for, because 97% of people do, and they think I'm full of it. Yeah. That's how I stay true to who I am. And unfortunately, you have to deal with people disliking you and villainizing you. Okay, so that's social courage. That's number 3. Okay, so far, keep the small promises you make to yourself. Set and honor clear boundaries. Social courage. 2 more. The fourth one's awesome. Invest in yourself. Invest in your education. Invest in clothing that you actually like. Invest in good tech. Invest in a nice haircut. Invest in self-care. Invest in courses. Invest in a coach. Invest in a therapist for sure. If you struggle with self-worth, go for therapy more than coaching. If you struggle with self-doubt, go for coaching. I always joke, if you want a coach, you probably need a therapist. That was me. If you want a therapist, you probably need a coach. That was my business partner. So that's invest in yourself. That one's, why would you invest in a home that you didn't believe in? Why would you renovate the kitchen if you didn't believe your home was valuable? Right? So that's a good metaphor. And then the last one is apples to apples comparison. I don't think I struggle with this a ton, but it's not fair to compare my level 7 year in business to your level 1. And so a lot of people, they go through their life comparing to people that are 15 years ahead of them. And I did a little bit of this in the beginning of my speaking career. I would compare to a Jim Rohn or Tony Robbins, for example. Yeah. But it's like, listen, they've been speaking for 30 years. That's not fair. You just started, right? So apples to apples comparisons are really important, because a lot of times some people compare only to the ceiling and they always feel like crap about themselves. Other people compare only to the floor and they end up a big fish in a small pond.
With so many tips and so much that is a good process for individuals, I'm wondering if a person was listening, what sort of takeaways can they have from this? Because you have a lot more to offer, obviously. So I'm saying, in terms of actionable tips, person's hearing you, what kind of tips can I apply to my life immediately?
The first one is figure out which one you struggle with more, self-belief and self-worth. Just identify that. The second one is, if it's self-belief, set a tiny goal for tomorrow and make sure you follow through. And make sure it's a little bit of a challenge. Make sure it's right on the edge of, I know I can do this, but I'm concerned that I won't. And if it's self-worth, basically you need to send a text message and or block someone. So I've blocked certain people that are very unkind and entitled. Usually people with low self-worth, they get walked on, right? So people are basically very entitled. So the idea here is, when you set a boundary, usually there's a lash out. And there's a great quote that says, anyone who overreacts to you setting a boundary was benefiting from you not having one. Like, if you set a boundary and said, hey, we need to be out of here, we got to go, I'm not going to be upset with you. Like, I get it. I understand. But if I was upset with you, that means I'm here for my own agenda more than to serve. And this is heavy stuff. But yeah, so if low self-belief, set a promise for tomorrow that's a little bit outside your comfort zone, that's in the external world, that's achievement oriented. If low self-worth, send a text that's a little uncomfortable, and set a boundary that's a little uncomfortable, and or just block somebody that you know you should.
Got it. So with this and those actionable tips and the wealth of knowledge that you have, and very curious about your background, of course, somebody else might be as well. How do they get a hold of you? How do they reach you? How can they work with you?
So at the end of the day, I've been trying to think about what my coaching is over the last 7 years. It's evolved a lot. So it's success and fulfillment, but it's in that order. And so I'm a business coach, but ultimately, if you don't have a business yet, but you want to build one eventually, it's more success coaching. And it's oriented around what's meaningful, because I know a lot of people who are very successful. I had a mentor reach out to me yesterday. He's super, super successful, but I can tell he has a life that's less meaningful now. He doesn't have as much going on, and because he already kind of got multi-millions and all that. So ultimately, I'm going to reorient your life, help you reorient your life in a more meaningful direction towards success and fulfillment, in that order. So how can people get a hold of me? You can go to nextleveluniverse.com, nextleveluniverse.com. It's spelled just like it sounds. Or you can go to our podcast, which is Next Level University, spelled just like it sounds. The website and the podcast are two different names, though. One is nextleveluniverse.com, which is all things next level. The other one is Next Level University. 1% improvement in your pocket from anywhere on the planet. Holistic life, love, health, and wealth. every single day. Kevin and I created a podcast to be the male role model in your pocket that we never had, because he also grew up without a father as well. So those are two places you can reach me, and I really appreciate it.
Well, I really appreciate the wealth of knowledge, and I'm not kidding. Great story, great insights, and extremely valuable information that people need to hear. So thank you very, very much for being my special guest today, Alan. Much obliged.
Thank you, Mick. I really appreciate it. It was an honor. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You bet. Thank you, sir. All right. If you like the kind of things that you are hearing, and I sure hope you do, I hope that you like, subscribe, positively review, and share the Dr. Digital podcast that bring guests like Alan and remarkable people to you all the time. I want to thank the sponsors of the podcast, and that's the people who had published both Burning America and the Best Interests of the Children, and also On Track Ian Hunter for their support. If you want to reach out to me and get a hold of me, well, you can. And that's I help business leaders, CEOs, and entrepreneurs break through their obscurity through oral and written presentations, building credibility and authority. And that's in my private Facebook group, Mastering Presentation Secrets. Until next time, this is the Dr. of Digital signing off. Deus Volt.